Yo, how's it going everybody? You got Sketch here and welcome back to the channel. On this episode we're playing a Toaplan shoot 'em up for the Genesis that for a long time has eluded me as it's one of the more uncommon games for the console. This game also comes up often as one of the more difficult shoot 'em ups alongside games like Undead Line and Gaiares, and is credited with being one of the earliest examples of bullet hell. Today we're checking out Grindstormer, developed by Toaplan and published by Tengen, releasing to arcades in 1993 and getting a Sega Genesis and Mega Drive port in 1994. RetroBrit recently reissued this on the Genesis, and this is the version we'll be looking at today. But before banging on too much more, let's check out the story. After a massive world war, global peace is finally achieved and humanity begins to colonize space. Centuries later, after an earthquake, a new island appears off the coast of Japan. Upon discovering an underwater civilization, their research and logs tell of their escape from an alien species. Their research led to the creation and abandonment of a prototype spacecraft with a warning to leave it deactivated or bring the Hunters of Doom. You're the world's only hope of survival now that the Hunters have found you again. Gameplay wise, you've got a 2D vertical shoot 'em up that takes you through 6 stages of interstellar carnage that will smoke most that step to it. Your weapons are a bit unique, with your Vulcan cannon being able to change its shot path by moving up or down on the screen and then locking in the aim with your fire button. There's also the search upgrade with its homing pods and missiles that send a barrage towards your enemies. Power and speed upgrades will make you faster and stronger, and you'll need every bit of help you can get as this is one of the earliest examples of bullet hell with its enemy fire patterns. This is easily one of Toaplan's most difficult console releases next to Hellfire, which is another one we'll discuss sometime soon. But the most common thing that comes up about Grindstormer after its visuals is its difficulty. Toaplan games often rely on memorization to make progress, though imagine adding endless rows of enemies and bullets that will destroy your craft in one hit. While there are checkpoints, one hit will end the run with no respawns, even during boss fights. Checkpoints can skip sections of stages, sometimes to your advantage, and other times enter the immediate fray of enemies with no upgrades if you're unlucky. You have screen clearing bombs that you can stack up to 6 of, and these also reset if you're shot down, so smoke them if you got them. If you lose all of your stocks, when you continue, a special icon will appear that will give you max weapon power to help you get moving again, but only once per continue. You also get options that orbit your craft, and once fully powered up, these things shred. The interesting thing here is when you have just 2 options, everything will continue to run at normal speed, but once you have 4 and a screen full of enemies, this game will slow down, making some patterns easier to see and move through. That's not to say this makes the game easier, considering that even when the game slows down, sometimes you'll accidentally steer yourself into a hit. Even from the first stage, you can get smoked quickly into the run within a couple minutes, but through repeated attempts and figuring out which weapons do the most sustained damage, you might just have a chance in repelling the Hunter's threat. When you get into the following stages, Grindstormer will proceed to beat the brakes off you until you figure out the dance and enemy waves. Stage 2 has floating islands that will come into the frame, and these will take you out if you aren't paying attention. Stage 3 is almost a bonus stage with how many extra points you can stack on certain enemies and destructible items. That is until you get to that stage encounter where it will rain down hazards, with its boss not only throwing more of them, but also an array of gunfire and bullets that will trace you. Stage 4 introduces enemies that will push you to the bottom of the screen, and right when you think you're safe, will use their thrusters to smoke you, even with the slightest graze causing it down. After navigating a sea of mech suits and enemies, you come into a larger version of that thruster enemy that will legit throw every fire pattern at you, along with the tracing laser that will push you up the screen once you see how that pattern works. Stages 5 and 6 are an absolute gauntlet, as you're immediately met with a mid-boss encounter that is one of the hardest in the game, since it vacuums in your craft and all surrounding bullets, only to fling them around the screen. If you make it past that, the stage boss is a large craft with orbiting satellites that launch a barrage of bullets. In its latter phases, it will create bullet chains to those satellites and eventually track you around the screen, forcing you to weave through them and their bullets. Flying into space for the final encounter is actually not as technical as the former bosses, but this stage will give you a run as it's throwing everything at you and will push you around the screen. If you can stay on your guard and lay down sustained fire, you'll crush this boss and clear the loop. Loop 2 is no joke and essentially runs the game on hard mode even if you start on easy, and this will turn everything up to 20. In Grindstormer, micro-dodging and standing on business will be the keys to victory. Graphics-wise, Grindstormer was programmed using Motorola 68000 CPUs to power its arcade release, and the Genesis version does replicate it rather well, despite some slowdown when the game gets visually intense. Grindstormer is a good-looking game with its large sprites and dynamic environments, immediately making it a standout amongst Toaplan-developed games for the console. The moment you fly in, you get the essence of games like Truxton, but dialed up a few notches with its sprite work and level design. Stages are all varied, starting out planet-side and eventually taking you up into space on the final stage. You get some gorgeous layered scrolling as you move through each stage, taking you through the clouds and over the oceans, and these parts look sick. Once you get to the more mechanical inner workings of the alien strongholds, these sections feel like a vertical take on some of Hellfire stage design with its notable Egyptian theming. Near the end, you get stages that are more metal as you cruise through a giant exoskeleton, and these levels look insane. There's a lot of variation between each stage, and there are some burners in here regarding their design. Enemy sprites are often huge, even with smaller enemies being on the larger end before exploding into massive mammoth crafts as they hit the screen, often in large numbers. This game, much like Truxton, will add rows of enemy formations, except these are often much larger. Even baseline enemies have some intricate patterns as they dart around the screen, and ground-based sentries can fry your craft in a millisecond if you aren't minding their weapon distance. Bosses are the star of the show, with creations that would feel like scaled-down versions of bouncy gun encounters, as these were developed close to each other, though that's not saying these battles aren't cooking on the high heat. The first boss encounter with the dual tanks will be the most familiar, only to go wild with battles moving forward, innovating the new territory of Toaplan designs. For each part familiar, Grindstormer throws in some curveballs during its boss fights, like stage 2 where it has tracing lasers, spreading bullets, and a barrage of mechs. Weapons are on deck here, and when you upgrade your craft fully, you'll be dishing out ballistics like no other. This is where the game does hit slow down once having 4 options and a lot of enemies on screen, as this does make the frame rate dip substantially. I know I mentioned this earlier, but the slowdown goes both ways here, at times helping you navigate through tougher patterns, and others steering you right into a hit. The main shot when concentrated is a solid wave beam of destruction, and the search options can quickly home in on your ops, reducing them to space junk. While the screen clearing bomb isn't as spectacular as the Truxton Skull Bomb, it does put in work with its rings of fire when detonated. Sound-wise, Grindstormer is solid with a soundtrack from returning composer Masahiro Yuge, who's worked on numerous Toaplan games including Truxton, Fireshark, and Takumi's Gigawing. The tunes have a range of jazzy grooves and hype metal tunes like you would hear in Batsugun or Fireshark. It's not quite as metal heavy as earlier titles like Zero Wing or Hellfire, but the tunes will keep you moving as you play through the game's 6 stages. The build up on the stage 5 tune is dope, with its bass line slowly morphing into shredding drop as you get into the main and mid boss. The final stage tune slaps pretty hard though, and it is a standout the more I play it back. The boss theme does repeat, but it also goes pretty hard. Sound effects are punchy, with explosions ranging from small to massive levels of boom, especially with those larger enemies. Even small enemies pop when downed, and the bigger they get, the louder they crash. When your ship goes down, it has a pretty pronounced crush sound, which is unique to your ship. Weapon audio is solid despite some shots not having audible sound bites. Some of the smaller enemies don't have sound effects when firing, but most of the larger enemies do. The stage 4 boss has several different attack sounds, for example, giving you audible indicators to get out of the way of what's coming. Overall, the audio and tunes are on par from what you would expect from a Toaplan release, and are certainly sounds that will get seared into memory considering the difficulty. The back end of the game has some dope music, and the further you get, the tunes get more intense and brooding. While that might not be my favorite Toaplan soundtrack, it's still a good one to play back from time to time. To sum it all up, Grindstormer is a great shoot 'em up from Toaplan and visually ambitious for the console release. Compared to its arcade version, it's incredible they were able to make this conversion be as close to the original as they did, despite the console limitations. The interesting thing about the console release would be that it contained 2 versions, being Grindstormer and V5, which changed the power-up structure and took away the screen clearing bombs. This is a difficult shoot 'em up from the developer, and I'd argue one of their hardest games, but it can be done with some patience and practice. This one initially can be somewhat punishing until you learn the stages and attack patterns, but once it clicks, it's a very fun, albeit challenging game. This one is easy to recommend for fans of shoot 'em ups and fans of high-octane action games for the Genesis and Mega Drive, as it offers a lot to learn about manic shooters, merging old and new school ideas. Grindstormer gets an 8 out of 10 and comes recommended to more seasoned shoot 'em up fans and those looking for challenging and stylish games towards the end of the Genesis lifespan. This is one that I just couldn't find locally or at conventions for a while, and it's dope to finally play and clear this after all this time. It is and has been on the upper end price-wise, with original Tengen cards going for around $90 loose and for about $160 for complete copies, with the Retrobit reissue copies going for around $70 each. This is included on the Slap Fight Grindstormer double pack for around $150, so if you see it while it's available, it's recommended that you grab it if you're into shooters and don't already own either. If you're into more methodical shoot 'em ups that are challenging yet fun to learn, play this one however you can, and when you can find an original copy for a good price, snap it up, you won't be disappointed. And I thank you again if you made it this far into the video, and if you find these videos helpful, that's awesome, glad you use it as a resource. Check back often, we'll have more reviews and commentaries come up in the near future, but until then, take it easy and stay safe out there. I'll see you on the next one.